Do not offer help unless asked for. From life's wisdom, they form celestial. 80% of the effort spent on predicting and preparing for potential hazards are unnecessary and result in a waste of time, energy, and resources. Similarly, 90% of voluntary efforts to help others are also unnecessary, harmful, and contrary to the natural order. Have I got it backwards? Think about the Great Wall that was built. How much effort was expended on it? Maintaining a million-strong army, constructing countless warships and aircraft. How much of that was utilized? You've given numerous heartfelt warnings and advice to prevent your children from being deceived when they go out. How much of your profound insights have been put into practice? You've agonized and racked your brains over how to prevent your spouse from straying. How much of your efforts have been effective? What's the likelihood that the scenarios you meticulously plan for actually occur in reality? Everyone can reflect on their own experiences and conclude that 90% of the measures and methods taken beforehand to prevent some debts, but in times of need, one might sell even their cooking pot. Whenever you face difficulties, others are obligated to repay this debt with all their might, even if it means selling their belongings or risking their lives. They must repay. It's better to repay in this lifetime. If they can't, they'll have to come back in the next life to repay you. Do you think this is not cruel? It forces others into economic debt. There was a married couple who, despite living modestly, were content and happy in their daily lives. They had a wealthy friend who, seeing their poor lifestyle, voluntarily lent them 30,000 yuan to teach them how to do business. From then on, this couple never experienced another peaceful day. In the end, not only did they fail to become wealthy, but they also almost lost all the 30,000 yuan borrowed from their friend. The husband eventually turned to a life of crime, and the wife disappeared after divorcing him. Consider a family of 6, with elderly members and young children, struggling to make ends meet. One day, the 75-year-old elder suddenly becomes unconscious and, after lying at home for 2 days with no improvement, seems beyond help. At this critical moment, a well-meaning person among their relatives and friends steps forward, lending them 10,000 yuan. He also calls the county hospital to send an ambulance to rush the elderly person to the hospital for treatment. Although the elderly person survives after being treated, they are left completely paralyzed. The 10,000 yuan borrowed is not only insufficient to cover the hospital treatment and hospitalization expenses, but also prompts them to borrow another 5,000 yuan from other relatives and friends. How will this family manage their lives from now on? Some people like to give gifts to relatives and friends. 90% of these gifts are often not urgently needed by the recipients, or sometimes they are things the recipients never wanted to use in the first place. By conventional standards, you might think you're giving something for free, whether it's useful or not, at least not causing any loss to the recipient, and that you should not reject something given for free. But in reality, the recipient ends up at a loss. The giver's well-intentioned gesture of care and help results in the recipient losing out. Refusing the gift might seem ungrateful. So, you accept it. At first, it seems like you're getting something for nothing, but in reality, it's accumulating debt. Both parties know exactly how much the gift is worth and how much debt they owe each other. When the time hasn't come, everything seems calm. But when the time comes, this debt must be repaid, converting the initially useless gift into a financial burden that must be matched or repaid in kind. It cuts off the path for others to repay debts through suffering. Not all suffering is necessarily a bad thing. Some suffering may be to help the person understand a certain truth, or it may be to allow the person to repay a debt. Everything happens for a reason. There is cause and effect. If you intervene and help someone without being asked, you may delay their path to liberation. Originally, it might have been an acute illness that could have been cured in 3 days, but because of your unsolicited help, it turned into a chronic illness that is difficult to cure even after 30 years. Disrupted others' plans. A father locked his son in a woodshed to save him, but a kind-hearted neighbor intervened and released the son. As a result, the son got involved in criminal activities and ended up in prison. A young girl with only primary school education moves to the city and starts working at a restaurant. With her quick learning and dexterity, she could easily pick up business skills, which would help her in the future to open her own restaurant after leaving her current job and getting married. However, there was a well-meaning person who, seeing the girl's beauty, felt that working in a restaurant was a waste of her talent. This person then helped her find a relatively easy and comfortable job. So, what happens next? Encourages vanity and complacency in people. Everyone encounters difficulties and faces impassable mountains of fire at times. When unable to solve them alone, seeking help from others is appropriate. However, some individuals, with strong vanity and self-esteem, always want to display grandiosity. Even after they are no longer a director, they show off as if they are still in that position. For such individuals, anyone who attempts to help them may inadvertently harm them, yet they will never recognize the value of humility and genuine character. Fostering laziness. Consider the animals in the zoo. They become accustomed to being fed by humans. What would their chances of survival be if they were returned to the wild? If someone doesn't ask for your help and you offer it voluntarily, they may become dependent. Initially, they could have exerted themselves during critical moments and discovered their own great potential. But once you step in to help, their potential may never get a chance to be unleashed. They will forever believe they are worthless, like the ugly duckling. Planting seeds of resentment in yourself. Voluntarily helping others usually happens when you are in a good mood, feeling empathetic, maintaining good relationships, or feeling compelled by circumstances. However, as time passes and your own situation changes, memories of those instances where you helped others will replay in your mind. You might meticulously recall each person you've assisted, how you helped them, and what you did for them. When you find yourself in a difficult or dangerous situation, you might hope that those you've helped in the past will step forward to assist you. If they do not step up voluntarily, you might feel resentment in your heart, thinking, "Humph, what ungrateful people," or "they must have no conscience," or "they're worse than animals for not repaying kindness." Aren't you planting resentment for yourself? Contradicting the natural order. The Tao governs birth, growth, and destruction, formation, existence, disintegration, and emptiness, as well as arising and declining. All follow the principles of natural law. Only those who understand the laws of nature can truly help others. Without understanding these principles, our well-intentioned acts might ironically lead to harm, and our good deeds might ironically result in unintended consequences. Just like the British soldier who rescued Hitler from death on the battlefield, his act of kindness was seen as an evil deed in the grand scheme of history and morality. Look at how brightly the flowers bloom in the fields. Look at how freely the birds fly in the sky. They don't need us to interfere or offer help unnecessarily. The more we intervene, the worse things may become. Have faith in the greatest creator. Trust in the natural order. Refrain from extending a helping hand where it's not needed. When we face difficulties, we must seek help. The road to Shu is hard, harder than climbing to the sky. Asking for help is difficult, harder than attempting extreme measures. But no matter how tough it is, it's essential to seek assistance when in trouble. By doing so, we not only understand life better ourselves, but also can timely lend a helping hand to others when they face adversity. Grateful for a drop of water received from others, one should repay with a gushing spring. Try to handle as much as possible on your own and believe in your unlimited potential. However, when necessary, bravely seek help from others, with the intention of repaying their kindness in the future. All rules have exceptions, especially when interacting with a life and death friend. In such critical situations, different considerations apply. Jumping out of the three realms and not within the five elements, one might even be willing to sacrifice their own life for another. In such moments, conventional sayings like, "do not offer help unless asked for," hold little relevance. Be cautious when someone comes forward to offer excessive flattery and concern. When someone says, "I'm doing this for your own good," be cautious. When someone volunteers to help you, you should think, "Oh, what bad luck." Further discussion on "do not offer help unless asked for." Form celestial. Born naturally, perish naturally. Wildflowers in the fields are nourished by sunlight and raindrops. Birds in the forests find their own food, and wild animals running on the African plains follow their own rules for reproduction. Humans, as one of the natural species created by the greatest creator, can also grow on their own. Everything operates within the Tao, the consciousness of the greatest creator, which provides arrangements for protection and punishment. From a microscopic perspective, it may seem chaotic, but from a macroscopic view, everything is orderly. It is this order that has allowed scientists to discover rules and create formulas that fit these rules. Without order, the sun would not rise from the east tomorrow. Life has its trajectory. Without it, rivers would overflow into the mountains and fields. Life follows the law of causality. Otherwise, everyone would be born into royal or wealthy families. In the kingdom of bees, there is a natural division of labor. Not all bees can become queen bees. If one ignores the process, even the most well-intentioned person can end up neglecting some aspects. As the saying goes, when heaven is about to confer a great responsibility on any man, it will exercise his mind with suffering, subject his sinews and bones to hard work, expose his body to hunger, put him to poverty, place obstacles in the paths of his deeds, so as to stimulate his mind, harden his nature, and improve wherever he is incompetent. If a well-intentioned person interferes in this process, it will inevitably disrupt it, thus leading to a situation where good intentions result in bad outcomes. Suppose there is an eagle chasing a rabbit. Would you save it or not? If you save the rabbit, what would happen to the eagle? In the eagle's nest, there are over a dozen eaglets waiting to be fed. If the eagle cannot catch the rabbit, those eaglets will starve. Compared to one rabbit, which is more important, the rabbit or the eaglets? In a certain place, packs of jackals are causing havoc to local creatures. Ordinary dogs are no match for wild wolves. To develop dogs capable of facing wild wolves, people fence in a litter of puppies. When the dogs become extremely hungry, they start to fight among themselves. Eventually, the last surviving dog becomes a formidable opponent to the wolves, who then find it difficult to be aggressive. If you show kindness and prevent the puppies from fighting each other, thus training them to be fierce and aggressive dogs, how will you deal with those wild wolves? A person who committed numerous wrongdoings in their previous life is now experiencing all sorts of hardships to repay past karmic debts. This is the compassionate nature of the heavenly law. If you constantly help them and prevent them from suffering, their debts will be difficult to settle, and they may continue to reincarnate in the human world, potentially accumulating boundless karmic debts again. Tell me, are you doing a good deed or a bad deed? A person hurried to the market to buy things, but got entangled by a gang of ruffians, unable to escape. This delay caused him to miss boarding a ship. Hours later, the ship capsized in a storm at sea, and all passengers aboard perished. If you, out of compassion, chased away the ruffians and then drove the person to catch the ship, what would be the outcome? When I speak of do not offer help unless asked for, I consider the flow of procedures. This adheres to the virtue of great benevolence in cultivation and practice. If one constantly displays their small virtues and disrupts the procedures, it contrasts with the principle of great benevolence. However, do not offer help unless asked for also implies that if someone does ask for help, one should do their utmost to assist, to the extent dictated by the current circumstances. If someone gets into a car accident and is trapped under the car, should you help or not? I think we should listen to the drive of our own hearts. If you hear their cry for help, then you should bravely rush to their rescue. If you didn't hear it, in this special situation, you have to decide for yourself. Why did he have an accident? When we condemn others for not helping in life-threatening situations, we should ask why. Can we ourselves always help when we see someone in danger? How many lives are lost every day? Have you saved any? And if you did save someone, what then? Can you solve all their troubles? Can you guarantee that saving them will lead to a happy and fulfilled life for them? For many people, survival is worse than death. Donating to aid African famine victims is a charitable act worthy of promotion. But why are there so many famine victims in Africa? Is it because of lack of sunlight? If you feed them today, what about tomorrow? If you feed them this year, what about next year? Giving them fishing tools would be better than giving them a fish. Some people say, even if people do not ask for help, I will still assist them. Sure, then go ahead and help. How many young people cannot afford to go to school? Please go and help them. How many elderly people are plagued by illness? Please go and help them. How many families are falling apart? Please go and help them. How many people are suffering from mental and emotional abuse? Please go and help them. How many people eat rougher meals, live in simpler conditions, and dress more humbly than you? Please go and help them. In this society, There are always more people who talk big than those who actually do good deeds. As long as each person refrains from doing wrong and causing trouble for others in society, help when asked for, and that would be a great thing. Please read the similar article. Do not offer help unless asked for. Those who have constant faith will have constant actions. Xiefeng, Mencius said, only those who have constant possessions can have constant hearts. Those who lack constant possessions will lack constant hearts. From this, we can understand that only when the common people live and work in peace and contentment can society be peaceful and harmonious, and all industries can prosper and develop. However, can those who have constant possessions always abide by the law and refrain from wrongdoing? Will those who lack constant possessions inevitably break the law and engage in all sorts of misconduct? Not necessarily. The legal protection of private property rights is a universal value. Any act that deprives individuals of their lawful private property is a crime, regardless of the noble moral justifications. The sanctity of lawful private property rights is both natural and divine, a protection and respect for the people's livelihood and reproduction. It is the guarantee of the people's survival and prosperity. Enabling the multitude to possess constant property is like providing vast pastures for cattle and sheep. This is the way to nurture the people of the world. But let us not forget that constant possessions belong to the material realm. If a person's steadfastness depends solely on material possessions, their perspective and realm would be too narrow, and their spirit and consciousness would remain at an animalistic level, making it difficult for their life to ascend to heaven. In heaven, everyone has the right to use, but no one has the right to own. Everything is shared, and everyone owns nothing yet possesses everything. Did Jesus Christ have constant possessions? Did Siddhartha Gautama Buddha and the sage Laozi have constant possessions? Did many missionaries have constant possessions? Yet, they all had constancy of heart. Above the notion that those who have constant possessions have constancy of heart lies a higher level of spiritual and conscious state. Those who have constant faith have constant actions. For those with unwavering faith, regardless of whether they possess constant material wealth or not, no matter how difficult and tortuous the path, they will persevere steadfastly towards their predetermined direction and goals, that is, constant action. Those who possess constant possessions may not refrain from wrongdoing, but those who have constant faith will never transgress. For example, someone may own a small farm, signifying constant possessions, yet cannot guarantee that they won't use pesticides, fertilizers, or even growth hormones on their vegetables and fruits. But for those with constant faith, they won't, because they are acutely aware of the dreadful consequences of transgression. Of course, the constancy of faith depends on what one believes in. If one believes in money is almighty or money can make ghosts grind, then their lifelong constancy will be in the pursuit of wealth. However, regardless of what the faithful believe in, the realm and perspective of those who have constant faith have constant actions far surpasses the realm and perspective of those who have constant possessions have constancy of heart. A pig, once it has a pigsty, possesses constant possessions and constancy of heart. A swan, without a fixed home and without constant possessions, has constant faith. Therefore, the swan can freely soar between heaven and earth, migrate freely with the change of seasons, and fly wherever it wants to go. The thinking style and approach to action in spiritual thinking. Xiefeng, we are already aware of the ladder of thinking in life: material thinking, image thinking, associative thinking, elusive thinking, visualized thinking, taiji thinking, non-form thinking, and holographic thinking. So why do we introduce rational thinking and spiritual thinking? Material thinking, image thinking, associative thinking, and elusive thinking all fall under rational thinking, which is characteristic of human thinking, while visualized thinking, taiji thinking, non-form thinking, and holographic thinking belong to celestial thinking. In other words, rational thinking and spiritual thinking serve as the boundary between human and celestial thinking. If your thinking is rational, do not doubt it. You are undoubtedly human. If, however, you contemplate and handle everything from the perspectives of visualization, taiji, non-form, and holography, without a doubt, you have transcended the ordinary and become celestial. Put simply, if our approach to problem-solving starts from the perspectives of materialism, imagery, association, and illusion, focusing on resolving the issues of survival such as food, clothing, shelter, transportation, and addressing life's inevitable challenges like aging, illness, and death, as well as securing respect, dignity, and a good reputation, and even aspiring to be admired or worshipped, then that is rational thinking, the thinking of humans. Spiritual thinking disregards these factors. Spiritual thinkers primarily consider whether their approach to handling affairs aligns with the will of the supreme life, the Creator, and whether it is consistent with their ultimate goal. In other words, spiritual thinkers make the will of the greatest Creator their own desire and the principles of Tao their guiding rules for action, without considering the benefits to themselves. They ponder whether their actions would please the greatest Creator. For instance, if the Holy Spirit tells you to live in the desert, a spiritual thinker will joyfully head to the desert without hesitation, thinking, "Oh, this is a revelation from the Holy Spirit. I believe in the Holy Spirit, so I should go live in the desert." It's that simple, direct, and straightforward. However, a rational thinker would never think or act in this manner. A rational thinker would ask, "There's no water in the desert, wouldn't people die of thirst? What if there's a sandstorm that buries the house? Live in the desert? Are you insane?" Similarly, if the Holy Spirit tells you to go to Canada, a rational thinker will first check how to get a visa. After finding out that applicants need a bank deposit and monthly bank transactions, and realizing they have neither, they would just forget it. "I don't meet the requirements." But a spiritual thinker wouldn't bother checking the requirements or listening to others' advice. They would immediately start the application process. At this point, you might wonder what the Holy Spirit is and how to know if it's a revelation from the Holy Spirit. Let me explain. The Holy Spirit is not a person. It's the voice within us or the greatest driving force we feel in our hearts. This driving force must bring us joy and excitement, not pressure or fear. You might think that spiritual thinkers have simplistic minds. Let me tell you, the minds of spiritual thinkers are infinitely more complex than those of rational thinkers. Spiritual thinkers belong to a higher dimensional thinking, and rational thinkers cannot comprehend the complexity of spiritual thinkers' minds. This can be demonstrated in three ways. Firstly, spiritual thinkers grasp the macroscopic, while rational thinkers grasp the microscopic. For instance, when seeking employment, spiritual thinkers prioritize whether the job brings them joy and happiness, whereas rational thinkers focus on aspects such as salary, working conditions, and prospects. Why is that? Because spiritual thinkers consider the direction of their lives and whether they can ultimately reach heaven. They are unwilling to do anything that conflicts with their destination. On the other hand, rational thinkers consider whether the job can meet their current life needs and don't consider whether their current actions will affect their ultimate goal. From this perspective, spiritual thinkers consider how to live, while rational thinkers consider how to survive. Secondly, spiritual thinkers consider life, while rational thinkers consider human life. To consider life, one must understand the principles and mysteries of life and its relationship with time and space. To consider human life, one only needs to learn the accumulated knowledge and experience of humanity and understand the operating rules of human society. Thirdly, spiritual thinkers maximize simplicity in handling complexity, while rational thinkers always complicate simplicity. For example, when building a community, those who participated in the construction of our third and fourth branches can recall that the layout and environment of the two communities were beautiful, right? If it were rational thinkers, they would gather everyone to discuss how to lay out and beautify the environment, insisting on drawing plans first, considering the selection of materials and the arrangement of personnel, and so on. However, in the construction of the two branches, there were no such discussions. I just imagined the layout and environment based on the terrain and then told everyone what to do. When everyone worked together, they didn't even know what the final community would look like. Yet, due to excellent cooperation, we completed two beautiful communities in just 2 years. It's worth emphasizing that the mind of someone who simplifies complex issues is significantly more insightful and considers a broader range of factors compared to someone who complicates straightforward matters. It's not even on the same level. Don't believe it? Why not attempt to simplify your own life and observe the outcomes? If you think that spiritual thinkers handle things superficially while rational thinkers are meticulous, that's a misunderstanding. For example, when building a house in a certain location, A spiritual thinker might say, just build a housey on high ground using wood and glass. It'll be good if it can last for 2 or 3 years. This would be hard for a rational thinker to accept. At the very least, they would consider the stability of the house and ensure it stands for at least 30 years, right? On the surface, the rational thinker's consideration seems entirely correct. But the crucial point is, the spiritual thinker considers that there will be a major earthquake in the location where the house is built 2 years later. Even the sturdiest house would collapse. Therefore, they suggest just doing it casually. There's no need to go to great lengths and waste financial, material, and human resources. This is something a rational thinker would never think of. So, what about life? Isn't it like building a house in an earthquake zone? Is it necessary to rack our brains and be so serious? My reply to the 4 questions raised by the chairman of the International Federation of Philosophical Societies, CFIng, Professor Dermot Moran, chairman of the International Federation of Philosophical Societies, raised the following 4 questions at the opening ceremony of the 24th World Congress of Philosophy held in Beijing on August 13, 2018. Is the relationship between man and society one or many? What is the future of mankind? In the face of uncertain technological innovations such as AI, where are we heading to? Are we facing the problem with a critical eye, and are we seeking verification of this? Is learning to be human for oneself or for others? My reply is as follows. The relationship between man and society is neither one nor many, but a combination. Look at the ant colony and the bee colony from a human perspective. The relationship between each ant and the colony is the relationship between the individual and the whole, the relationship between the cell and the body. If the whole disappears, the individual cannot survive. If the body perishes, the cells die. And without the individual, there is no whole. Without cells, there is no body. So the relationship between an ant and an ant colony is a combination. When looking at human society from a higher level of life than that of human beings, in fact, the relationship between individuals and society is not fundamentally different from the relationship between an ant and an ant colony. Even with wolves and lions, this rule also applies. If there are only 3 people on this earth, then these 3 people will constitute a society, and a single person can only have a chance to survive if they combine with the society. Otherwise, they will inevitably become extinct. The future of mankind lies in the Xiefeng-style communist society. Otherwise, mankind is bound to perish. The path of American civilization will become narrower and narrower. Chinese civilization is a dead end, and the integration of political and religious civilization in some countries in the Middle East will inevitably decline. Intelligent technology will continue to leap forward and cannot be stopped. Eventually, biological robots that are more advanced than humans will be born. In the future, the reproduction method of a mother being pregnant and giving birth to children will be replaced by biological robots with biochemical nursery rooms. As long as there is competition, human beings will be eliminated by biological robots. There is only one way to survive, and that is to produce and live in accordance with Xiefeng-style communism. In the face of these problems, we can neither treat them in a critical way, nor in a way of seeking verification. Criticism can only find problems but cannot solve them. Verification can only cross the river by feeling the stones. It is difficult to guarantee the crossing of the river. Maybe you will be overturned and drowned in the river or by a wave before you reach the center of the river. So, what is the best plan for facing this problem? Answer: to implement the superhuman philosophy, that is, the person who is completely selfless and the most intelligent will make analysis, judgment, and induction and point out the way forward. Remember, the collective wisdom of millions of mediocrities is not as good as the foresight and sagacity of a saint. Democracy is the pursuit of mediocrities, and democracy cannot solve the problem of directionality. Learning to be human is neither for oneself nor for others, but a return to pure human nature. The nature that conforms to the way of nature is pure human nature, and the nature that does not conform to the way of nature is not pure human nature. This is like building a computer. As long as you build a computer that performs well, it can play a corresponding role no matter who uses it. If you consider making for yourself or making for others when manufacturing, The computer will fail if, making for yourself, others cannot use it. If, making for others, its performance will be greatly reduced. There are thousands of philosophers and amateur philosophers participating in the 24th World Conference of Philosophy in the Great Hall of the People in Beijing currently. They are all masters in the philosophical world today. I am willing to challenge the masters, that is, I can solve all the philosophical problems that you cannot solve. Do you not believe me? Bring your problem to me and see how I will solve it. Some perceptions about life. Xiefeng. Everyone's present must be accumulated from their past in speech, behaviors, and performances. Everyone's speech, behavior, and performance are absolutely determined by his inner world. Everyone's inner world is absolutely determined by his upbringing, cultivation, and self-restraint. Everyone's upbringing, cultivation, and self-restraint are absolutely determined by his beliefs and ideals. It is inferred from this that the path of life is determined by one's beliefs and ideals. To build the international family, I recently contacted and observed more than 50 communities in the United States and Canada. I also contacted communities in Japan and Portugal. I discovered many interesting phenomena. First, when something beautiful suddenly came, people would always doubt its pure beauty. Instead of embracing it boldly, people deliberately reject it. Secondly, everyone has beautiful ideals, but once the ideal things do come, they are at a loss to understand them and will even resist them. Finally, in order to unite the community, the outstanding must cater to and accommodate the mediocre. Once catered and accommodated to, it is tantamount to retrogression, and retrogression is painful. From this, we found that world harmony is not achieved by morality and ideals, not by preaching and guidance, but by the advancement of science and technology, by changes in lifestyle, and by the compulsion to survive. To follow the trend, I recently created my own Facebook account and discovered a new world. That is, I can establish connections with people all over the world while sitting in front of my computer. I have had friend relationships with people in dozens of countries, but I find that people are fonder of expressing themselves than paying attention to others. Not long ago, I got in touch with some classmates whom I had lost touch with over 30 years ago. Oh, I was so happy. I hurriedly shared my decades of experience and insights with everyone. The result was that there were very few responses. It was like throwing a stone in a lake that could not splash any water. It gave me the feeling that this generation, born in the 1950s and 1960s, has been swallowed up by the secular world. Except for enjoying their later life, actually waiting for death, this generation has no more enthusiasm and passion for life. They will not make any special contributions to the civilizational sublimation of this world. If they make any contribution, it is nothing more than sticking to tradition, restoring old ways, and attacking new ideas. I pay close attention to the natural changes in the world every day and find that no place on the earth is absolutely safe. It is either severely cold or tormented by scorching heat, besieged by floods, or scorched by drought, submerged by volcanic ash, or struck down by an earthquake. It either meets with a mudslide or encounters an infectious disease. It is either scorched by wildfires or plagued by wars. It is either blown down by a hurricane or engulfed by a typhoon. It is either shrouded in smog or ravaged by pollution, and it is perilous everywhere. Disasters will befall from time to time. I keep a constant eye on the changes in social ecology, and I found that none of the so many presidents and political elites around the world can come up with a path or plan for the development of human society that the people all over the world will agree with. From this, I feel that truly creative wisdom does not come from the brains of heads of state, but from the people. Civil society is the greatest hope for the rise of human civilization. Human beings have been living on the earth for 5,000 years, and the ideal production and life mode of humans has not yet been born on the earth. If there is an ideal life mode, it is the new oasis for life mode created by Life Chanuan, that is, the Xiefeng-style communism model. Where do people live the happiest? I lived in Binka, the most remote area of Zimbabwe, for a period of time. I lived in the most primitive place on Santo Island in Vanuatu in the South Pacific for a period of time. I lived in the prosperous city of Shenzhen of China for a period of time, and lived in the highly developed city of Vancouver, Canada for a period of time. The conclusion is that happiness has little to do with the place where you live, but has much to do with the pressures of life. The greater the pressure of life, the less happy people will be, and the lower the pressure of life, the happier they will be. Yesterday, I read the article of Songlong Shuhua called The 14 Dregs Left by History in China, Rebellion Without Money, Corruption with Money. I felt that it resonated with me very much. The 14 dregs are regional awareness, anti-foreign sentiment, fighting among their own, obedience, shamelessly touting, all talk and no action, no tradition of peacefully changing regimes, handling affairs by relying on interpersonal relationships and blood relationships, worshipping the official ranks, fame, position, and glorifying the ancestors, paying no attention to science, treating people who criticize themselves as enemies. If they have no money, they will rebel, and if they have money, they will become corrupt. They can only share adversity, not peace and happiness. Regarding old and ruined cultural relics as national treasures, and not regarding talents as national treasures. Strong retro-psychology, weak scientific thinking, and strong sense of superstition. The buying and selling of official positions is popular. I have been thinking about one thing these days. Everyone wants to live well, but after investigating history and observing the status quo, we must ask, how many people have lived an ideal life? From the emperor and president to the common people, from historical celebrities to current stars, from high-ranking officials and billionaires to workers, peasants and peddlers, from experts and scholars to illiterates and thieves, from African blacks to European and American whites and to Oriental yellow people, very few people have lived in happiness on their own. The current human race has a history of nearly 5,000 years, but most people have not lived an ideal life. What is the problem? After observation, I came to the following conclusion. Everyone does not know what kind of life they need. They are just drifting around. People are struggling with selfish desires, but they do not know that the more selfish they become, the more miserable their lives will be. People cannot let go of failures and frustrations, and they do things with resentment, which makes their situation worse. People want to live a good life by getting married and starting a family, but fall into a trap, which is counterproductive for them. The best inexhaustible resource for mankind is sex. Everyone yearns for a good sex life. However, mankind treats sexual resources as rubbish and waste in a moral, ethical, religious, and customary way. Reap what you have sown is an unbreakable truth, but what are people growing? Every day people are planting jealousy, complaints, anger, rage, hatred, condemnation, attacks, suppression, insults, fraud, lies, ridicule, irony, sarcasm, nitpicking, theft, corruption, luxury, waste, pollution, competition, killing, entrapping, cheating,